rainy conditions, but a really stunning car. This one here is the Bentley Continental GT Speed, the top version here with the W12 beneath the hood and over 600 horsepower. And we'll give you a short tour on the exterior because it's really ugly outside. Huge front grille. We'll soon jump to the interior and of course the driving. But here, symmetric line, huge front grille, and I like it in the chrome style. And a lot of manufacturers go for black front grilles now. I still prefer the chrome style. Remarkable that Bentley is still doing round headlights. So only Porsche and Bentley, I think, are doing this. This keeps a little bit of a tradition and they seem to be allowed to do this. Other manufacturers, people would say it's just old school. If we then move around the side profile of the car, here on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars. What does the Speed version offer? First of all, this fake outtake for the air, which is just for styling purposes anymore. In the B form, also the new Bentayga SUV will receive that. The Speed also has the logo here that everyone sees. It's the Speed version. 21-inch alloys, they really like 21-inch, and great details, for example, that here, where you put the air in, also has a small B logo on it. I like those details. Massive brake discs behind that as well. And then, this is my favorite Bentley as for the styling, because you have this coupe style ending. I would always prefer the convertible in general for riding with open top, but design-wise, this is my favorite, also with the strong shoulders right here. Such a beautiful and timeless design. And well, this is officially the second generation, but the generation change was rather a facelift, as this car started in the first generation in 2003, then had this generation change around 2011. But in Bentley, you don't just do an overall generation again, you change just something, because of course they don't have too much money for all of the new generation again of such a high luxury car. One short look at the rear. This one is the most conservative one, especially with those round tail lights. I would have imagined maybe that they spice it up a little bit more. This one here forms a little bit of a small rear wing, and maybe we see some more modern feature here, but dramatic that we got a very, very flat window line. So overall, still a stunning and timeless car. Let's also check out the interior and a little bit of the driving. Now we'll show you the inside, which is more cozy in this kind of weather condition, of course. See it right here, and the ignition is turned on and the doors open, therefore it's also beeping. Here we got the brown interior with another contrast, and you see this symmetric layout. We see it here at the steering wheel with the Bentley wings, and also in the middle part. You see this high symmetry, and it's really dramatic forms, and you see it's really pulled tight, so everything looks very clean and sporty, and I like that, especially here at the Continental layouts. Also, if you, for example, compare it to the Mustang. Also at the inside of the doors, you got this comb structure as a styling element, and all of the buttons here as well, they are from real metal. That's what you expect then. And the entry cap for the Speed model, you see it here, also with some checkered structure here. You can even feel them. Those details we like. Also at the adjustments of the seats, checkered structure around it, one lumbar support, massage function, and of course the standard seat adjustments you would expect here for lengthening the seating area. Of course, you do have a comfortable seating position here. Well, it is still a sporty car, no question. Headroom, I'm 1.86 m in height. There's still enough space. And if you go with a seat a little bit more back, you also have enough room right here. It is, by the way, a little bit more spacious in the left-hand drive version, because it has to do with the transmission, how everything is set. Also, maybe has something to do with the, with the German technology that is placed inside, which is usually set out for the left-handed drive cars. And even people driving the right-hand cars here from the UK, they told me they here in this one also prefer the left-hand drive, because you just have more place for your feet and your foot, especially in that area right here. Nevertheless, the version, I think again, here those very clean lines, I like that everything is really so pulled tight. By the way, another interesting detail that the colors of the lower and the upper part of the dashboard, they vary here. Speed logo here for the Speed version, and this one here is real brushed aluminum. It used to be done by hand, every single one by hand with some special tools. Nowadays, although there's still much handcraft involved, check out our factory tour review definitely. This one here is now done by machine that you can produce more of those checkered structures. And one more Speed logo we also have at the seats. I love when they get some special stitching in here. And you could, for example, also request that your name is getting stitched on there. Middle part of the cockpit here is also my favorite part, which is inspired still by aircraft with an analog clock. And to close or open the vents, you have those valve styling here, also one of my favorite parts. The infotainment system is, let's say, one of my least favorite parts. It's still not that fast when you switch into certain areas. You see here, also going to the GPS, you see it always takes time to go to the certain spots. Also here the display is rather old. See, again, we're at Bentley Motors and Crew. Nothing what you would expect of a over 200,000 euro car. This will improve when we have the Bentayga, the new SUV. This will also feature a completely new infotainment system. But so far as it is here right now, not really the best part of the car. If we move further down, that one I like again with the checkered real metal buttons. Those ones are really nice to control. But even if in some cheaper cars we have seen better buttons here for the controls, and if you build such an expensive car, you have to be aware that also your buttons are getting rated. If we move down further here to check to for example, flip in the side mirrors, then here are some comfortable controls because you can cool the seats. In leather seats you sweat, so you also have to have the possibility to cool down the seats or to use the heating at the same time. It's possible when you, for example, we're getting in with wet clothes in winter times, you maybe want to dry them and heat them up at the very same time. This one here is to set the suspension more to the comfort or the sport level. You can see it now here in the display. And I will also try it when driving the car, how much difference this one is really making. You see how the infotainment system is lagging behind. So infotainment-wise, they still have to do something. And now to our driving part of the GT Speed. And it's a very unusual driving part for us here today, not only because it's an extraordinary car, of course, but we have driven this car here from the same model family as the Flying Spur, as the sedan with more space in the rear, but also as the convertible, as the GTC. And this one here is a little bit more unusual because it's a right-hand drive for me, so very special episode for our friends in the UK, and maybe also with UK driving system overseas as well. So you have to adapt to it. And a lot of people asked me, how different is it really? Well, when you're starting to drive it and you're used to left-hand drive, and will be the same if you switch the other way around, it first feels very, very weird, especially because you don't have a natural feeling for the outer part. It means here I really see and feel where the car is ending, but on the other side, so your side there, you tend to see, especially with a big car, do I hit the pavement with the alloys or something like that? So you're not really sure of that, but that feeling then comes as when you drive the car further. And the biggest problem is actually when you're turning right here with the right-hand drive car, when you're turning right, because as a left-hand driver, you tend to go in the wrong direction then, and it would be the other way around. But you get used to it pretty much when you're driving it for a longer time. And there are even people in Germany, for example, who buy right-hand drive cars on purpose because, especially some unique cars, they are way cheaper than of course, well, because not everyone wants to do this. But let's now focus on this car. We got really British condition here, but they could also be as much German, those conditions. So pure rain, well, it's not too cold as we've already made. And there's a question whether driving a car with so much horsepower here in those conditions, does it still feel okay? Well, it does work because of the all-wheel drive in all of, ambulance. Because in all of the Bentley cars, especially here from this model family, they have been using the permanent all-wheel drive, and that means you get a little bit more power distribution to the rear than to the front. For example, standard is like 40-60 front and rear. And then of course it can be distributed a little bit even more to the front and or the rear, but that's the basic setup. And therefore it's also not that harsh as you would maybe experience with another very high horsepower intensive car, because you have the all-wheel drive here and don't have so much rear spin. And also this car is very heavy, about 2,300 tons, and that's of course makes the car stick to the ground pretty much. So we'll wait for our Bentley convoy, because we're driving in a nice Bentley convoy today, and well, it feels like, you know, like a fan tour a little bit, driving with 4 Bentleys here through the UK. And you've seen it also in our front. We got the GTC here. I would always go for the GTC because I'm a convertible fan, although just from the styling, from the outline, I do prefer the coupe version. The coupe is really so the GT Coupe is the most beautiful Bentley to me, but the convertible the most enjoyable one. Here in the Speed version, you know, we know the W12 as well. We've shown you that in the GTC review. Check out that one, and also check out the Flying Spur review of Autogefühl, because there we already tested the W12. Here the GT Speed version on this 6-liter engine has even more horsepower on top, 635 horsepower than here. Does it really matter? No, you rather buy it for status, to know you have really the fastest, the strongest one. Is it less comfortable than the others? Not really. Well, the good thing in general about the Bentley cars is that they are some big luxury cars, but they are still a little bit focused on the driving. And that's different, for example, than in the Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce is rather bought for being driven. A Bentley you still buy for driving yourself as well. So that is the main difference there. And you know, it also has some genes and from the Volkswagen family, which is not a bad thing. And I've mentioned that also in our assembly tour. As for the Bentayga, which is sharing parts and especially the chassis with the Audi Q7, you would just take advantages of this, because nowadays, as a very small manufacturer, it's almost impossible to do everything on your own and still keep up a very, very high level of building quality and also technological savviness. So now I'm already used to driving with the, for me, wrong side of the road, and also in the rainy conditions you tend to remain pretty calm in here because it's very silent. You know, they've figured out the sound insulation pretty well, so also when it's rainy outside you can remain very, very calm in here. And the car also transports a natural steering feeling. When we go into some 90-degree corners, I can show you more of that as well. By the way, as we are closely to the Crew factory plant, check out the factory tour as well. Always some new Bentaygas passing us at the other side is also funny stuff. It wouldn't usually happen. I don't know, maybe if you're driving through Knightsbridge or Islington in London, that might happen, that so many Bentleys pass by, but usually nowhere else. See it right here. The steering is not the most direct one, but it gives you a kind of natural and relaxed feeling. So there are definitely more like sportier steerings, no question. But this one here does give you a relaxed ride, that's for sure. About the acceleration, for example, we also have miles today here in the digital speedometer, but that's also nice because here in the analog instruments we got both. And let's say we get some, in between we do some 50 to 70 acceleration. Let's hammer throttle right now. And that's it. So that is 50 to 70 miles an hour. So it's of course different in kilometers. Just, you know, if you, in case you don't know, 60 miles an hour is approximately 100 kilometers an hour. And you can see it here also pretty well. And that's it. When we do an 0 to 200 kilometers an hour acceleration, that will be 0 to 125 miles. So miles is always less. You could take it that way. You also heard something of the sound, of course. Really nice, refined growling. It's not too exaggerated because when you're driving a Bentley, you know, you don't want to be exposed at, you know, at any cost, and don't want to say, you know, I'm the biggest man of all. I'm growling everyone to death. Yes, you want a refined sound, but nothing too exaggerated, and I think they've done that here quite well. We're waiting for our convoy here again, that everyone stays close to us. So are we finished? Behind us is a Mulsanne, by the way. So it's a really nice lineup with a GTC, the GT Speed, and the Mulsanne behind us. Must be a very nice picture when people passing us on the other side of the road, definitely. So I'm starting to feel even more comfortable here on the other side, but still it's an unusual feeling for me, of course. When we talk about the difference GTC or GT, well, in driving it's no difference. It's just the roof. This one here is a little bit more silent, of course, as we don't have the convertible roof. That's the main difference. If we talk about driving the Flying Spur or this one, I would take this one as for the driving because I don't really need the capacity of the Flying Spur as for the rear passengers. And this one is of course a little bit shorter then, and also feels sportier in the ride. And yeah, I mean, as this car is already big enough, I would then at any time prefer the sportier ride. How can you compare it, for example, if you think about other luxury cars that are not in this top luxury segment, but in a high premium segment, but already cost a lot of money? For example, BMW 7 Series, Audi A8, Mercedes S-Class. I think there, especially the 7 Series and the A8 are even more driver cars. They are a little bit easier to drive. They don't feel that heavy. They aren't that heavy, in fact. You might remember from our reports from the Audi A8 production or also from the 7 Series review. The A8 is all aluminum and the 7 Series is mixed aluminum, steel and carbon fiber, and so they're both pretty light as for this class, about 1,800 kilograms. And this 500 kilograms of difference makes a lot of difference in driving. So I could also imagine that someone says, okay, don't go for the Bentley, I want a sportier ride, and that's the reason I would rather go for a 7 Series or for an A8. So that's an inconceivable option. But here again, the Bentley you rather take if you also want to buy something of the, you know, unique qualities and definitely design in outside and inside, because you see a lot of 7 Series on the road and you hardly see so many Bentleys. So you buy it to buy this exclusiveness, of course. But as for the driving, this would be definitely the favorite Bentley as for the driving. And as soon as we get to a part where we can maybe hit the throttle once more. And I can also show you some more. By the way, we also have shifting pedals here. It's an automatic converter gearbox we have built in here. Does a good job. Usually when in the auto mode, it's pretty relaxing and you don't feel the shifting process that much. But you can also use the shifting pedals here and shift down, for example, and then you also hear it rolling. The automatic shifting lever is here in the middle. You can also go to the S mode. That one, then the car is automatically shifting down earlier when you're shifting down, but later when you're shifting up. So right now, keeping with 30 miles in the second gear. Okay, for the city is of course a little bit exaggerated, but you know, if you want to cut loose at some point, then you could go into this sport mode and have an even better performance. And it also changes a little bit basically from the sound setup. Suspension I can also set in the middle console, for example. I can set it from comfort to sport. Right now it's more set to the comfort, and I would also basically leave it that way because you usually want to appreciate the comfort more. But I can of course test it for you how much difference it does make when I, for example, set it all on sport. Yeah, especially now in the small bumps, they're more transported through the car now. Is it really a very noticeably difference? Let's see. Let's go into the complete opposite direction, put it to comfort. Now over some bumps. Well, it's not such a heavy difference, to be honest. So we had adaptive dampers where you had more difference of those, but I would be very much fine if the car is more a comfortable ride, because if you want a very, very stiff sporty ride, you probably won't buy such a car here. So am I hitting the throttle maybe? Well, not when it's 30 miles an hour inside the city, but soon we will have another chance for that. What about the overview in this car? To the front, there's no problem, but we do have a sporty cockpit layout, no question. Also the views through the side mirror is fine. As for the overview, what about the sides? Yeah, well, that is limited because of this very beautiful coupe form. Then, of course, you know, you can't see very much to the side each, and to the rear also, because the window is very, very flat in the rear. That also gives you a hard time looking in the rear. It's still okay, but you know, if you have a dramatic design on the outside, you also have to live with some limitations on the inside. So I think despite those bad weather conditions on the outside, I hope you still enjoyed this ride with me here. And let's see, maybe I can deliver you some more of the performance of the sound. Then we'll add that here to our driving impressions. Maybe we can show it instantly, because I think there's a sign approaching saying we can hammer the throttle. Let's see. I'm in a sport mode still. You can also go back to second gear, for example. You also hear it. What's up, guys? Let's do this. Second gear. Whoa. The best indicator for me is looking at our cameraman, and when the cameraman is like this, then I know a car is fast.